Salam and welcome back to After Maghrib, brothers and sisters. Hope you're well, inshallah. Hope you've had a fantastic week. If you tuned into the podcast last week, you'll know that we talked about hijacked masculinity and toxic influences, the ways in which people have manipulated masculinity for their own purposes and their own gain, and that includes influencers online. And throughout the week, we've seen a video in the last few days that includes the likes of a very certain and particular famous, well-renowned online dawah speaker or preacher who's allegedly abused his authority as a spiritual leader and as someone of knowledge. And that's kind of led us on to have this conversation today, where we're going to be talking about abuse of authority, spiritual abuse, and so on. So it's a fantastic conversation. As always, I cannot do it by myself, so I'm joined by my brother, my dear respected Mohamed Ali. Assalamu alaikum. Abu Ammar, congratulations on the birth of your son.
Oh, thank you so much, man.
May Allah bless him, protect him, inshallah. How are you? How's it been?
Bro, it's been crazy. Obviously, like, I was expecting you to like reach over and say salam to Sayyid Ali, but obviously
I don't know who you're
kind
talking
of caught
about,
me
bro.
off guard a bit.
I have no idea who you're talking about. But yeah, man.
But yeah.
Welcome to the fatherhood club, man. It's nice to have a
Alhamdulillah.
host with me.
Bro, everyone's father's here now, innit? We
Alhamdulillah.
just need to pray for Mujtaba, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, man.
Ya Rab.
Inshallah, ya Rab.
May Allah grant him a noble wife. Assalamu alaikum, shabab.
Alaikum salam. I was going to say we have a very special guest joining us today, Sayyid Ali Radhawi. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Welcome to After Maghrib.
Abu Hadi, Abu Ammar, it's a pleasure to be beside you.
Lovely to have you on the podcast, bro.
Habibi.
How long have you been engaging with our content?
Oof.
And
Since
what is your
June-
views on After
Since
Maghrib?
June 2022.
Wow. He's
Right from the beginning.
one of the early ones.
And
Yeah.
I engaged
Loyal.
with the content.
Loyal supporter.
Yeah, 100%. Number one diehard fan.
MashaAllah.
After
Mashallah.
It's a
Maghrib,
pleasure to have you. An honor.
always.
Inshallah. But you know what? As much as I love you, Sayyid Ali, my co-host is irreplaceable, Mohamed Ali.
Ahsant.
Ya
So,
Allah.
you know,
Ahsant.
we're very honored to have you join us as a guest
Khidmatan.
today.
Khadi. You said
I
it.
can't do this. I can't do it no more. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. How you doing, bro?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. I'm good. I'm happy that we now have a father beside us. Welcome to our club. You know what I
Welcome to the club.
mean? Yeah, man.
Bro, I can't lie. If it was that special, then I should have got the big man chair. But obviously, Sayyid Ali has obviously swiped that today.
La la astaghfir.
Do you know what it is?
What all
Do you know
fathers.
what it is? With the night, with the newborn night shifts, you need a comfortable place to sit
It's
and
true.
rest.
It's true.
Because how often are you getting up?
I can't lie. It's on and off. It's different every day. It's just I don't know what to expect every day. I guess innit? Some days it's really like no sleep at all, but then other days it's like it's okay. But because I'm on paternity leave, it's okay anyway because I sleep through the
Alhamdulillah.
day.
There's no routine.
It's no routine
No
whatsoever.
routine.
How many hours of sleep are you getting? Would you say on average? Daily
Nah,
now?
I'm actually sleeping enough. I think in terms of hours, but it's through the day, so it's really
Staggered,
messing up my,
yeah.
it's messing up my whole routine. Sometimes I'll just be watching. Like the other day, I was trying to watch a debate, and I just fell asleep.
Between who?
Between
On what?
it was to do with it was an Islamic debate basically.
Aristotle.
A Shia debate, and they were just discussing like taqleed and some other things like that. And yeah, I just fell asleep while I was watching it. So
You fell asleep?
yeah, you know what I mean. I can't lie, it wasn't that interesting to be fair.
Fair enough, fair enough,
But yeah.
fair enough.
So yeah, I've been falling asleep here and there. But alhamdulillah, man,
You're good, you're
It's
here.
a crazy, it's
We're
an
here.
amazing experience.
We made it.
Inshallah, barakah and everything, and
Inshallah.
you know,
Inshallah. May Allah protect him and
habibi.
always
Jazakumullah
guide him
khair.
towards haqq. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Ameen.
All right, guys, let's talk about this. So, as I mentioned, in the last few days, we've seen a video come out that first came out from a group of bloggers in the US who had been contacted by a sister who raised a case allegedly against Mohammed Hijab.
Yeah.
Okay, who of course we've mentioned on the podcast in the past, and he's someone of great influence. He's not just well known in the Islamic scene online, but also in the Western scene now, of course, with his appearances in Oxford Union, on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show, and other places as well. Obviously, his relationship online with Andrew Tate, so on and so forth. He's developed an online personality. For those of us within the Shia community, we know that we're not his biggest fans and he's not ours. And that is because there's an extensive history of debates and kind of dialogue between him, whether you want to call it dialogue, between himself and different representatives of the Shia school of thought. But we're not talking about that today.
No.
And I don't think that his polemical history with Shias has much of a role to play in this conversation, which is talking about abuse of authority in the space of spiritual leaders specifically. Now, what I want to say as a disclaimer, brothers and sisters, before we go any further, is that all three of us are not experts in abuse of any sort. None of us have studied this or are professionals in this field. Beyond that as well, we would highly, highly encourage anyone who's experiencing any form of abuse to reach out to a professional who can support you and who can observe your situation and be able to be the best judge of whether your situation needs to be escalated and whether it's something which you may need to contact authorities for. So please make sure you do that, and please do not take any sort of abuse lightly. And inshallah, we pray everyone is doing well. Mohammed, where should we begin on this topic?
I think the topic of spiritual abuse is it's a wide topic. So when we're speaking about specifically the video of Mohammed Hijab, of course these are alleged statements. There's been some sort of response, and obviously there will be an investigation that goes on that will show us the complete extent of what's actually happened. But when we look at this individual, like in and of himself, there are videos of him, and as you mentioned, he has a relationship with Andrew Tate. And other individuals that have very strong views with regards to gender dynamics, with regards to women. And I think those relationships already place a question mark there, that when you see these things happen, or these things him be accused of these things, it doesn't come as a shock, right? When you watch some of their videos, recently I saw a video where he was speaking about marriage and people that he's been marrying off and how easy marriage is.
Oh, this is the McDonald's one?
Yeah, exactly.
I heard that 2 days ago.
He was laughing in it. He was making light of the situation. These kinds of like mannerisms in general towards women, I think that's where all of these things kind of stem from.
Right.
And when we're talking about Mohammed Hijab specifically. And when you look at the wider community as well, there's been many scandals. This is not the first.
Yeah.
This is not the first one at all.
Yeah.
Like you have that Qari Fatih.
Yeah.
I think he's like a Bosnian or something, Sefajic. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but he had the investigation done into him where he had a lot of he had, I think, sexual assault claims, many like different claims that were made against him and investigated by human appeal, and he was found to be guilty. So there were, and there's been many others as well.
Was this with like one individual, or was it a multiple?
I think it was multiple individuals, and
wow.
there was mention of sexually transmitted diseases and things like that, which is
Allahu Akbar.
for a Qari of the Quran, a famous Qari of the Quran, it doesn't even make sense as to how
it shouldn't make sense.
how those things are happening. So I think it's a much wider issue than just Mohammed Hijab. Of course, Mohammed Hijab is just one kind of piece of this whole picture.
Yeah, of course.
And it all comes back to the spiritual abuse, that authority that he is perceived to have, right? As somebody that is an online da'wah, a preacher. And the sister mentioned in the video, she said he's been praised by scholars internationally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So in their minds, they feel like these guys, they can't go wrong. They can't have a un-Islamic way of acting. They can't be immoral because of that authority that they have. And that's what they use, I guess, to manipulate.
So this means that they have a level of trust.
Exactly.
Sahih? And then they abuse this. And I think not just focus on Mohammed Hijab's issue here. I think generically, like I've heard stories, I'm sure you guys have come across things, not just in the Muslim world. It could be, in the workplace. It could be, for example, a manager and an employee. It can be, for example, a teacher and a student. Like these things affect every environment. But what's sad is when it comes to the Muslim community, because we hold ourselves to a very high standard. And if we have, let's say, people looking up to these individuals, be them Quran teachers, be them madrasa teachers, be them speakers, scholars, people from the da'wah scene, that level of trust do we blindly trust these people, or should we not? Yani,
I see what you
but
mean.
what concerns me is that normally is the people who are victimized in this. It's normally people who have already been victims of something else. So either they've left like a toxic marriage, or they've had a very disastrous divorce and they've gone through so much XYZ. They've probably faced an abusive relationship with their first husband, and now they're looking to give a relationship another chance with someone who they look up to, and then they manipulate them, mislead them, emotionally abuse them. But what shocks me the most, Muhammad, and we spoke about this a bit early on, is that they intentionally lie to them. This is something I don't understand. Like, which, and when you use like hadith and religion to back this false promises, like, where does this stem from?
Yeah, I think this is the craziest part about this whole thing. Like when they talk about fiqh, and looking into the kind of dynamics of marriage, I think this is where, as followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt alaykum salam, we have a lot to be proud of, and we have a lot to look towards when we're looking at the Ahlul Bayt alaykum salam and their teachings. The way that the way they protect women, it's not the case in the opposing schools. So, for example, this particular case where the sister, she mentioned that false promises were made to her, and that after the marriage, when she brought this up, the ulama said to her, he hasn't done anything wrong. Right? Now, whether that happened or it didn't happen, and whether principally it exists in Sunni fiqh, whereby there's actually even a istifta that was asked by Ibn Baz. Yeah, it was asked to Ibn Baz, and Ibn Baz was one of the greatest scholars of the Salafi ulama, right? He's like considered like one of the highest. Like when you're talking about the biggest scholars in the Salafi movement, you're talking about Ibn Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Al-Albani. He's like on that level. So Ibn Baz, he was asked by a guy. He said, "I'm a Syrian worker. I'm going to Saudi. I want to work there for a few months, right? And my wife isn't here. So I'm looking to marry somebody for the period that I'm here. But I'm going to divorce her once I leave Saudi and go back to my hometown. So can I do this or not?" Ibn Baz said, yes, you can do that, but the only way it's allowed is if you don't tell the woman that you're going to divorce her. He said, why? Why can you not tell her? Because if you tell her that I'm going to divorce you in 6 months, then that's mut'ah, and mut'ah is haram.
Oh my days.
Wow.
So the only way, in fact, to do it would be to lie to her, to deceive her. And on top of that, Ibn Baz said in the fatwa, he said, and this is what the majority of the ulama of Ahl Sunnah believe in. So even though, like, you know, to nowadays, when these topics are brought up, misyar, marriage with intention of divorce, they will bring one fatwa of one scholar that said, oh, it's not allowed. Perhaps Al-Albani, for example, he said it's not allowed. And that's the fatwa that they will die on. But Ibn Baz is saying the majority of the Ahl Sunnah ulama, this is what they believed in. Whereas in Shi'ism, and they speak about mut'ah again and again. You guys, you mut'ah, you Shi'ah, you sons of mut'ah, you daughters of everything, like mut'ah. But in mut'ah, at the very least, there's no deceit involved.
It's honesty.
There's no like, I'm gonna mess around with this.
It's transparent, at least.
It's transparent. At the end of the day, there's a contract.
Right.
Yeah. There are conditions.
Yeah.
And the woman knows of the conditions the same way the man knows about the conditions. So at least in 6 months or however long that is, she's aware of the situation, صح?
Yes.
But here, you can literally ruin someone's life completely, and you'll go to the scholar, the woman will go to the scholar and he'll tell her, what can I do? Well, it's allowed. It's in the fiqh, it's allowed.
And this is called misyar marriage.
Yeah, misyar, I think misyar is a bit different in that this is marriage with the intention of divorce. Yeah, what we've just spoken about. Misyar is like a different kind of topic. So misyar is the idea that a man can marry a woman where the woman basically concedes some of her rights.
Okay.
Yeah, so they take this back to an idea that they believe that basically Rasulullah in his time, he married, sallallahu alayhi wa alih, he married a number of widowed women, right? And one of them being Sayyidah Sauda. And Sayyida Sauda was quite elderly in age. And the other wives of Rasulullah would always be kind of like kicking up a fuss about the time that he spends with each of the wives. And the report says historically that Sayyida Sauda, because she was elderly in age, she said, you know what, like, I'm not too fussed about this anyway. Yeah, so she gave up her nights with Rasulullah, and she said, you can distribute it amongst the other wives. So based on this, some of their scholars, they drew this principle that you can marry somebody with them conceding their rights, basically. And so, for example, in Saudi, it happens regularly now, whereby there's a woman that she's been married and then she's divorced, and then no one wants to marry her like permanently anymore.
Yeah.
So this is how they do it. There'll be a guy will come, he will do misyar with her. He won't pay for her maintenance. He won't pay for any of the other, like, you know, the rights of the woman.
He's not obliged to.
He's not obliged to.
Okay,
according
to that contract. And he'll come and he'll enjoy relations basically with her, but he's not responsible for her, basically. And with the deceit thing, so for example, they mentioned obviously that he deceived her in trying to act as if he was going to, and then he didn't. That's also allowed according to some scholars.
Okay.
So that misyar is involved in the conversation, but obviously like from a different angle. But the marriage with intention of divorce also, that's like a major thing. And they've used it so many times, and the ulama allow it. And it ruins people's lives.
Yeah.
Subhanallah.
Madness.
Yeah. No, I think there's a few things that come to mind. Firstly, I think there's a massive issue with the reverence. So, for example, revering figures of authority. And look, this happens amongst men and women. So, for example, as human beings, we have a tendency to look up to people who we consider to be high in knowledge, high in eloquence, high in precision of and accuracy of information or whatever it is. So the same thing goes with sisters who look up to men, typically, because men typically tend to be in these positions. And obviously men may look up to sisters who they think are, superior in certain qualities as well. But with the reverence that then leads on to abuse, there's an issue on mainly on the abuser when it comes to egoism. So for example, they'll have a level of like an egotistical core, a narcissistic core, where they think it's okay for me to manipulate people because I can manipulate the knowledge I have, and they'll believe it. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, he addresses this directly and harshly in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 44, where Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, he says, how can you tell people to do what is right and forget to do it yourselves, even though you recite the scripture? Have you no sense? So Allah is speaking harshly to people of knowledge.
تأمرون الناس بالبر وتنسون أنفسكم وأنتم تتلون الكتاب.
Yes.
Yeah.
أفلا تعقلون is the last. Have you no sense? So it's a very, very, very like direct and harsh criticism of people who, in this verse, recite the Quran. And as far as I understand, it's not just recitation of the Quran, but understanding and consumption of the Quran as part of yourselves. And then obviously manipulation of people who look up to you and people who you are interacting with. And according to this verse, telling people to do what is right. You're doing amr bil ma'roof to people who are looking for knowledge, but they're manipulating that knowledge. But reverence is the key issue here. So for example, people revering people to such a degree where you see them as flawless, as infallibles, as faultless, as being incapable of doing any harm. We should always be taking a pinch of salt with anyone. And like you said Ali, not just obviously people in positions of religious authority, but people in positions of any authority. So that includes like people, like you said, people in your workplace, people in other institutions, educational, whatever it might be. Obviously, we've seen this issue time and time again in the Catholic circles. Okay, and that's obviously a huge talking
point. That's a good example to give the fact we're in the UK.
That
if you think of it, parents trust their kids to go to church and whatnot, and then years down the line they find out they were abused. For example, like this, till today is shocking. Like if I hear the radio, I still see the news till today. Parents come out and say, our kids just opened up to us when they were young, and now they're 40 or 50. And they've been suffering from this trauma, and they can't speak to no one.
And you know what it is? A lot. Sorry, Said, but I was just going to add something you said earlier, which I agreed with, is that a lot of these times the victims of abuse have been mistreated, sometimes, not all times, because obviously everyone who goes through that has had a first instance, but in many cases people who are more vulnerable to forms of abuse have experienced something in the past, so either childhood trauma or past relationship or something of those forms, right? In those cases, when they open up to a person of knowledge, let's say a scholar or someone, in this case like a YouTube preacher, whether or not it's true, there's two sides to every story, but let's say any preacher,
someone with a position of authority,
right? So when they open up to these people, they're usually exposing personal details, they're usually experiencing stories, they're usually experiencing dates, times, they're exposing their emotional flaws as well, and they're trusting their deepest and most intimate secrets with someone, and assuming that these people are in many cases like a brick wall. I can talk to them like a brick wall, and they won't reflect or consume what I'm saying, and they will be non-judgmental about what I'm telling them. That's not always the case. Do you see what I'm saying? So even when this information is shared with people, in my humble opinion, it should be shared with a level, there should be a veil in what you're saying to people of positions of authority. In any case, even for those who are going through messy divorces, people who have been abused. We've talked a few months ago about narcissism with Sayyid Mustafa Qazwini. He talked about very, very specific examples and sometimes really heinous crimes that people have committed in positions of authority, even people of family, and in those cases, when you're speaking to a scholar, trust the scholar, do your research, do your background research, maybe gain a few credible sources and references about the scholar themselves before you engage with the scholar. When you speak to the scholar, drip feed information, see how they react, and then obviously position yourselves accordingly to how the scholar responds to you.
And also, I think what's really sad is that in communities that we are in, so for example, the South Asian community, whether that be Shia or Sunni community, right? When you look at, for example, the madrasat in Bradford, in Luton, and in these places where there's a large quantity of South Asian Muslims, you always hear these stories about abuse in the Quran,
of course,
Quran madrasas, and all of that. And they're in such a high number, and so many people don't speak out based on the fact that even when they tell people in their household, they tell their mother, for example, this happened to me at madrasa.
They won't believe it.
What will the mother tell them? The mother will tell them, don't tell anyone. You know why don't tell anyone? Because it's a shame for you.
Yes.
It's a shame for you. It's a shame for our family. If you say that this happened to you, no one's going to marry you. Everyone's going to shame you. You're causing fitna by speaking against this person of authority. I think that whole there's a barrier there between the lay people and the people of authority, where even with regards to their reputation, it's so important, their reputation, that you are expected to just live with the harm that has been done with you in some of these communities.
But why do you think that? Why what gets it to that level? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, look, you mentioned a specific madrasas.
I think there's sanamia in some extent, to some extent there is a kind of sanamia is like idolatry, right? When you take individuals to be an ultimate authority, right? For example, we read in Ziyar Jamia, we say to the Ahlul Bayt, I disassociate from every walijatin dunakum, any individual as a authority, a complete authority other than you, Ahlul Bayt. I disassociate myself from them. I don't consider anybody to be a complete authority. I think in our kind of South Asian communities as well, there has always kind of been a level of sanamia.
100%.
Right? There is that level of, it's you're brought up being taught that these people in positions of authority, whether Shia or Sunni, right? That's the kind of the culture that you're brought up with. And it's not a bad culture in entirety. Of course, there has to be a level of respect for the people in places of authority. You have to have respect for the service that they give to the religion and all of those things. But I think that culture also contributes to feeling like they will feel ashamed or guilty themselves, as if this must be my fault because this individual obviously can't do anything wrong. Right? And I think that's a big problem that we're still kind of getting to the solution for, because being diaspora and being first generation in many cases means that old culture kind of
colonial mentality.
Exactly, that culture kind of spills over as well into,
and it's a supremacy thing as well, like, and a superiority thing, because you think you give in to these like mentalities very easily, and a lot of elder generations have that like submissive mentality to anyone that they deem has position of authority, even if that position of authority is not earned, and that, you know, it's not something that they've earned on merit. And, you know, people are used to that. And to be very honest, you still see that in parts of South Asia as well.
Yeah, 100%. And on top of that, even if you go to look at the problems that were caused in places like Bradford, there was an individual, Imam Asim, he was called. He used to debate Dawah man and about Mawlid and things. This guy, he had a... No, not Qari Asim. That guy's a different guy. This guy's he's called Imam Asim. He's a Bradford guy. And he had a scandal as well. He abused some child or something like that. But the worst part is when they want to even like deal with the issue, the way that they deal with it is they bring like the elder scholars.
Yeah.
And they all kind of sit in a meeting, and then they punish the guy, and they tell him, okay, now you have to take off your, like, the equivalent of your amama or whatever, and you can't come to the mosque for this long, and you can't give khutbah for this long, or whatever. But even the correct authorities are not gone to. Like, they don't even contact the police. They just want to sort it out between them. Between themselves. So you see, like, all of these cultures, I think, the culture, I think, is what really contributes more to abuse. And that's why, like, there needs to be some sort of systems that are transparent and, like you said, behind the veil, to be able to kind of go through these things. Obviously, Human Appeal did that investigation, a detailed investigation into the individual we mentioned earlier, the Qari Fatih. And they done an amazing investigation. Like, you can see the level of detail there. And independent organizations like that in every community are necessary.
Of course,
you know, so that people can get their justice, have somebody to speak to, and are not afraid of their reputation being harmed.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, that's just how it is. Like, you know, societies are like that. So yeah, there definitely needs to be these systems in place.
Well, there has to be systems, and I think sometimes I may be wrong in saying this, but I think sometimes the people who fall trapped to this, become victims to this, I think that because they try to keep things in secret, things private, I think they allow themselves to be taken advantage of, by the way. Because, for example, let's just give a scenario. Let's say there's a sister, she's on the topic of marriage, she's just had a divorce, whatnot, maybe her husband is still abusive, or maybe her husband, for example, denying her nafaqah, for example, or whatever it is. So she'll go to who? She'll speak to someone, an authority, someone who represents her faith, someone who can become a mediator between the two, whatever it is, right? So she'll speak to this person, and this person speaks back to her. Advice, guidance, back and forth. Sometimes this back and forth could be months. It could be weeks. 99% of the time, it's just him and her. There is no one else involved, by the way. Sahih? So sometimes I feel like that opens a door to something. And
of course,
on both ends, by the way, I don't think, for example, the male in this scenario purposely wants to abuse. But I think he's human as well. At the end of the day, shaitan is there, bro. It can affect anyone. My point is, I don't think they purposely do this. But they're in a situation where, for example, they may have feelings for someone, and they want to get close to someone, and then they change their mind later. She becomes a victim, and he becomes, you know.
Yeah.
Can I just add like two caveats here? Yeah. The first one is, I don't think, as in the mass majority of scholars we'd want to believe, and I'm sure are, you know,
99% are doing just fine, bro.
Pure,
doing just fine.
God-fearing, pious individuals.
100%.
But of course, there have been cases within the Shia community and outside the Shia community where we have seen things across the world over the course of time, right? That's the first thing. The second thing I'd want to say is that a majority of cases are where abusers are male, but obviously that's because in majority of cases, people in positions of leadership are male. There are cases where people are in positions of leadership are female and have done the same. And I know a personal experience of someone I know in our community who was a younger man at the time, and he had an elder sister who tried to teach him and mentor him. And I know this, like and unfortunately, he nearly got caught into something really toxic and messed up because she tried to manipulate him.
Yeah.
Right? I know the story myself. I've heard it. I've seen it firsthand. Well, at least from what I've been told, and it's just disgusting, bro. And there's a couple other things. Yeah, I want to mention a hadith which I found from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in Kitab al-Kafi, where he says, "Do not trust the one who seeks leadership with your religion or your women." That is such a deep, powerful statement.
Say that one more time.
Do not trust those who seek leadership with your religion or your women.
Okay.
Right? Now, this is obviously, I don't think the Imam is saying have no trust in someone who has leadership in religion.
Don't blindly trust.
But don't blindly trust. And
Yeah.
of course, we have a school of thought which teaches us not to blindly trust anyone who's not infallible. Right? And in such a way, we have to understand that there's no authority in the dunya which we believe is not Hujjatullah. And who we believe is not the representative of Allah on the earth. Right, and that of course in this day and age there's only one person, that's the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr Zaman, AjAllah Ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif, and we believe that he's the only one who we have complete and undisputed, undivided trust in authority and leadership in all cases. But of course, even the greatest leaders of our community, we may trust in many cases, even with our lives. But you must always be smart in the way you talk about these things.
Yeah, 100%. I think also another hadith of Imam Sadiq والسلام, that also is in the exact same thing, but I think it kind of explains this narration further as well, is a narration that is narrated from him by Abu Hamza al-Thumali. Or it might have been from Imam Sajjad, I think, when we're talking about Abu Hamza. But the Imam says, إِيَّاكَ وَالرِّئَاسَةِ ما طلبها أحد إلا هلك. Yeah, he says that beware of seeking leadership. Yeah, no one ever sought leadership except that they were destroyed. And the companion responded to Imam Sajjad. He said, "What do you mean by that? Because there's none from us that except that we like to be asked questions and we like for people to follow us in our knowledge." And he said, also everything that I know, half of what I know, I've learned from other people. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And the Imam said to him, La, he says, ليس حيث تذهب. It's not how you've thought it. He says, إياك أن تنصب رجلا دون الحجة فتصدقه في كل ما قال. He says, what I'm trying to warn you of is not of taking knowledge from people or following people or even answering people's questions. What I'm warning you from is to choose an individual and to place him in the position of the Imam such that you think that everything he says is true.
Yeah, and it can't be questions, it can't be confused.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So obviously this doesn't negate our following of scholars. We are ordered by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam to follow the scholars, the people in authority, in other narrations with regards to taqleed, with regards to taking our religion from individuals. The Imams have given criteria of the people that we need to take our religion from, but also having that caveat of this isn't complete and absolute authority like the authority of the infallibles, but at the same time you have to have a lot of respect for these scholars and make sure that you go towards them to get your knowledge.
Let me ask a question, and I'm going to direct this to you, said, yeah. You know, when we talk about spiritual abuse, and especially in the sense of scholars, do you think that goes and extends beyond the interactions that they have with people off the minbar? So, for example, on the minbar, when a scholar is teaching, and preaching, and there is a knowledge in their mind that the audience will more or less believe what I'm saying without criticism, right? Or without critical analysis at the bare minimum. So, a scholar may be explaining a concept and teaching a concept without with the expectation that most people will believe what he's saying. Do you feel that it is a form of abuse to manipulate people by conditioning them with a level of information that they believe people will not question? So, for example, a scholar who abuses people by distorted information or white lies in the way they're teaching or preaching something, is that a form of abuse as well?
I don't think it's just a form of abuse if they're doing this
spiritual
on purpose.
Abuse.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I know something is haqq, as a scholar, let's say I've studied something, I've researched, I know the full truth. But I believe maybe that people won't understand the full picture, or maybe I can slightly twist it to my own gain, or maybe I don't personally agree with what I know to be the truth, so I'm slightly going to manipulate it such that I believe people will accept a more digestible form of information. Is that a form of abuse?
Spiritual abuse.
Yeah, or whatever sort of abuse you want to call it.
I don't know if it can fall under the category of abuse, but there's definitely manipulation there. There's definitely a holding back
deceit.
hack there. There is deceit.
We're not saying people do this, but if it were to happen,
I think people do this. By
I
the
think
way.
I'm gonna disagree. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
you don't think that it's wrong?
Yeah, I don't.
No,
think
I'm
so.
not saying. Listen,
I think like if
I get-
somebody doesn't present the full truth,
Yeah. So look, if you're holding,
I get
if
that
you're
because
holding back some
you're playing the game.
information, I
Yeah.
don't think there's a problem.
No,
with
no,
it.
I agree with
But if you're
that.
purposely manipulating a point
yeah.
If you're
to
if you're
sway someone's viewpoint or something,
we live in such a polarizing community where you have scholars, and I'm again like caveating again, but I'm saying like you'll have scholars who have such polarizing opinions that sometimes they will play cards.
by the way, this
for
is not just
political
scholars,
reasons.
Ahmed. This is
Not just scholars.
Speakers,
Yeah, anyone.
Yeah,
It could-
yeah.
anyone who's imparting information of any
Yeah,
sort.
yeah.
It could be through social media.
Could be the
People-
dawah scene,
guys who are
speakers
tweeting.
corner, anyone.
Yeah. But the reason I say scholars is just as a general sense, or people who's imparting information.
I think obviously there's a hadith from the Imams alayhim salam where they say, you know, kallimu nas ala qadri uqulihim, right? Speak to
Yes.
people on the level of
That
their
level that
intellect.
they understand.
And there
I
may
get
be
that.
a lot of knowledge that
Yeah, so you hold back.
unfortunately you shouldn't
Yeah.
you or you can even present half truths within them, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, you know, there's even riwayat where the imams say, don't speak to people about that which they don't understand. He says, do you wish for Allah and the messenger to be belied? Do you want that person to sit there and just be like, you know what, that doesn't even make sense. What Rasulullah has said there doesn't make sense. You would have been the reason for that individual
To have that thought.
saying
Potentially be
a
misguided.
statement of kufr
Yeah.
by saying what Rasulullah said didn't make sense. So, you know, there is that level of responsibility for the scholar or the speaker on the minbar. And I think, to be fair, like in the time that we live in, I think every speaker knows that they will be questioned and criticized. I think, you know, back in the
100%.
day,
Yeah.
I think any speaker could have gone onto the minbar and,
Said
you know, said
anything,
anything and
people
people would believe it. But like even myself now, yeah, I've given some majalis at, in a center. There's a specific individual in that center and he sits at the back. He's an elderly uncle, right? He's quite an old man.
Bless him.
Every time I finish my lecture, I come down and he's got 10 questions for me.
good for
10
him.
criticisms. And he's my favorite
Bro,
person in
every
that
time
mosque.
I hear Jummah and Nice, I have 20 criticisms.
He's my favorite attendee in that because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know he's listening every word I said.
Yeah.
And he's got
Yeah.
criticism and he's got questions and it helps me to think.
Yeah.
And it helps
See,
me
the
to
thing
come
is,
up
yeah.
with.
So look, I'm gonna play devil's. I actually agree with the fact that you can't give the full truth to all people,
Yeah.
especially when you've got knowledge that everyone in the crowd has varying levels of Islamic education and obviously are at different stages of their journey. You have children, you have elderly, and everyone in between.
And by the
I
way,
get that.
I know you want to say a point. And we see this sometimes, like we listen to certain speakers or ulama, the way they present their points, depending on where they are,
Varies.
they'll give a different
Yeah, of
analysis,
course,
a different
of course.
reading.
And whether it's
At least to the
conversational or
same
not.
thing, but
Of
different
course.
depth
Yeah,
of
yeah.
information.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been
Ahlul
able
Bayt
to
did
do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been able to do that because we have a podcast. So we've been able to hear what someone says, a sheikh or anyone, maybe critique them or play devil's advocate or further question and then get further explanation. And when they understand that maybe there's a desire for a deeper level of understanding, then they'll get to that deeper level. So I get that. And I get that a scholar has to play the game. Yeah. What I'm talking about specifically is intentionally twisting what you know to be haqq. So literally twisting it or manipulating it to your own advantage, whether it's political game, whether it's affiliations to certain organizations or schools of thought or whatever it might be, such that you then condition a group of people to have a certain mindset.
Yeah, no, that I think is obviously now that I think the way you've positioned it there is like there are people that kind of they study like cult-like mentalities,
Yeah.
right? They figure out what it takes to be able to control like a certain amount of people. So, for example, there's that documentary on Netflix. It's called Wild Wild Country, I think. Yeah, and it's about this individual who was in India, Osho. You guys ever heard of him?
No.
I haven't, no.
Okay, so this guy, he was like an Indian sage in India, yeah?
Okay.
And he started this movement, a cult-like movement, and he had like thousands and thousands of people following it, yeah? White people, like all sorts of backgrounds, and they're educated people as well. He got them to the point that he was able to move them all to a state in America, buy some land, and build like a whole area for themselves. They took over the elections. They done all of those things.
Yeah.
He was able to do that through basically taking some truths
Manipulate.
about corruption and things like that that
Yeah.
are happening, and then just painting
Because
it a different way.
you know what's
and those
interesting?
people, they look at him as now like he's now like God to them.
Yeah.
Because you know, you mentioned this. I'm going to call these guys out. That Ahmadi religion of peace. I
Yeah,
think they're called a
100%.
classic
example.
of a group of. Have you heard of them, Said?
Is
Kalim
it the
Sulhaq.
guys with the hats?
The guys with the beanies.
The
yeah.
Assassin's Creed guys.
Yes.
You see, the way their hoodie is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like you can't see their eyes, innit? Cold.
Yeah. No, but like, look,
I
as-
like the fashion.
And by
I'll
the
give
way,
it to
they've
them.
Do you know what it is? Yeah,
hopping
that-
on social media.
they have been, and
They've
look,
been
and do you
popping.
know
They have
why?
YouTube.
Do
They
you
have
know
a
why?
channel now
It's
as well.
do you know why? It's a manipulation of truth of some truths. So, for example, they will use some ahadith from the school of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They'll use verses of the Holy Quran. They'll manipulate it to their advantage. They'll use certain hadiths which talk about proofs of the Imam, signs of the Imam, all of these things, and they'll say, wait, look.
Yeah.
This guy here.
Yeah.
He's the ambassador of the Imam. Now forget that. He is the Mahdi. He's not just the Mahdi, he's the second Mahdi, for example. Like and that is a clear distortion of what we know to be happening.
100%,
So for
yeah.
example, that's a good example of cult-like mentalities.
Yeah.
And mentalities which are spreading like wildfire.
Yeah.
And what I will say is to viewers out there, you will start, whether you've seen them or not, you will eventually see them online. They comment on all of our videos. Yeah. And if you are listening, stop commenting. We will start to block you. Okay, because these guys
Or we
are,
might even do a refutation of
Is it with the ones
why
where-
not?
the
Muhammad
Ma-
Ali can do a refutation.
Is
but
it where they say the Mahdi has appeared?
the Mahdi is a
the
pig.
Mahdi's
yeah,
appeared.
yeah.
Bro,
Like-
if you watch their TV channel and you know like the bottom thing like that moves, it's like you know like
Ticker,
on Sky
called the
News,
ticker.
yeah, the
Yeah,
ticker,
yeah,
yeah.
I remember
Bro,
those
all the
ABTV
hadith,
days.
bro, Al Kafi, Kitab Al Ghaiba, this
Yeah,
that. You're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
bro,
yeah.
What's going
But
on here?
look, the Holy Quran talks about people who misuse the words of
Yeah,
the Holy Quran.
100%.
And in the same way, you can do that with hadith. And if anything, it's easier with hadith.
Yeah.
Because hadith, there's way more hadith than the other verses of the Holy Quran. And obviously, there's more books than just the one. And
Yeah.
obviously, there's different gradings of dalil and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of these things. So
100%.
how are people going to ever be able to tell what's what in it? So they will just manipulate masses. And you see a lot of their followers are people who have suffered. You can tell
Yeah.
by observing their characteristics and their behaviors.
Yeah.
People who have suffered forms of abuse, and a lot of the time people who have been societal
true.
rejects, basically
very
people who have
true.
been left out or like destitute from inclusion. Like, what do you expect?
Yeah.
So I know we've slightly swayed,
Yeah.
but this does come back to the fact that people are yearning for a deeper meaning. They're yearning for like inclusion. They're yearning for justice, and they will look to people who claim to have knowledge, whether that's someone who's a YouTube speaker or whether that's someone who claims to be like a messianical figure. The point being is that these people claim to have a level of deeper knowledge and understanding that you don't have. So if you want to get to the right place and you want to get to a place where you want to get to, listen to me and do what I tell you. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a mentality and an ideology which has existed for thousands of years, yeah, until now. So we're seeing it evolve. So whether it's in relationships or whether it's on a cult-like group global level, it's still there.
May Allah protect us all from deceit,
Wallahi, I mean.
abuse.
A lot of the time, these people who are in the midst of being conditioned for abuse don't even
Yeah.
know it. Do you get me? So there are people out there who are being like, they're in the midst of that journey. You hear that video we talked about at the beginning, the sister who allegedly claims that certain things had happened to her, that she was abused over the course of 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. Right, in the course of those 4 years, she would have known if what she has said to be true is actually true. She would have known in that period. I have to caveat, and we should caveat although we're not Mohammed Hijab's biggest fans, like we said, but there's a refutation of what she said up until as of now when we're recording, and there seems to be like another side to the story.
Listen, there's always two
But who
sides
cares?
to the
Yeah,
coin,
of
We're
course,
right?
talking about the
course.
topic at large.
Yeah, I think. Look, when you're talking about the alleged case, I think that's not like, you know, obviously it's happened in the past week, so it's fresh, and that's why it kind of ties into the topic of spiritual abuse, and that's why we've brought it up. But this is something that's happened, as we've mentioned, like across the board, and that's why we thought it was important to talk about. Even coming back to something that you said, like, you know, manipulating specific situations, like a situation of divorce, right? Even there are scandals with regards to this in the UK. There's the group Salafi Publications,
Yeah.
S-Pubs, Shamsi's group.
I've seen them. I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen some of that stuff,
What have they done? Abu Khadija and these individuals,
Yeah.
they've been doing divorces for individuals. They've been like reciting khula, basically, yeah, without the credentials to be able to do so, and then after that, marrying the woman. Right, even like some of their big scholars in like Saudi and stuff have been like, bro, who gave you authority to give a divorce?
Sayyid, just on this topic, yeah, something that Mohamed Ali wrote on WhatsApp earlier, which I just want to make like a really important talking point. Red flags on how to spot a cult-like leader.
100%.
Okay, red flags on how to spot a cult-like leader. They demand secrecy. Okay, so whatever we believe, you can't share it. Okay, keep it within our close circle. They isolate themselves from the wider Shia population. Yeah, if they want to know what we're on about, they don't need to know. We'll keep it within ourselves.
100.
They include and involve themselves into their followers' lives.
Yes.
So, for example, things that people are doing within their personal lives, like you said, with marriage. I've seen decision making. What car shall I buy? They'll ask a spiritual leader. Do you see what I mean? To like degrees like that, which are personal decisions. They'll ask someone for their, what their opinion is and get that sort. These are, sorry, bro.
Skiing on the Alps.
Skiing on the Alps. Yeah, I don't know what cults you're involved in. Say what's the one? I'm joking. No, I get it.
I clocked that reference very, very quickly.
Yeah, I understood it as well. But like these are some red flags.
Another huge one in our community as well, with regards to cults, are people that are anti like institution. Anti like scholarship, anti taqleed, anti all forms of authority other than themselves.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with
That's
a big one. Yeah.
I think that's huge because that basically cuts you off from the rest of the community. When you've seen in some of these cults that have existed, you'll see there'll be an individual in that cult and he'll be in that cult for so long and every other community has been spoken against. So guess what? Now when that individual has a fight within his cult, he's got nowhere to go. Now everybody else was deviant, and I've had a fight with these guys. So now, like, it comes to the point where you have no even standing in Islam anymore because now there's nobody that you consider to be a good Muslim.
That's what I mean by spiritual abuse, by manipulating and distorting the truth, because you've seen this, and we've seen, like, I know you and I both know people who have been in such cult-like situations in the last 20 odd years,
100%,
and who have left those situations and come out of that and returned to Sadat, and they've come back and basically said, well, yeah, this is messed. I had a friend of mine who's now, mashallah, like a proper top alim, and he said, he's like, bro, these guys were teaching me yin and yang and Chinese spirituality and all of these feng shui and all of that. And he's saying that they were preceding this over the hadith and the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt.
Exactly.
That's
mad.
That's a huge red flag.
And this is what I'm allowed to say on the podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot here. Do you know what I'm saying?
On top of that as well, even that hadith I mentioned about Abu Hamza al-Thumali, another, I think Sufyan ibn Yahya is the alteration of that hadith. And he says it's a different kind of alternative. And the Imam says, تصدقه في كل ما قال وتدعو الناس إليه. That when you call somebody, when you call people towards an individual, that's what he's warning him against, right? So for example, if somebody has fallen into a cult, if your first instinct is to call other people towards your leader, you're in a cult.
Yeah.
Unless you're calling towards the Ahlul Bayt and saying, come back towards the Ahlul Bayt, you're in a cult.
Let me ask you a question.
You're in a cult, bro.
This is a question I got for you, Sid Ali.
Yeah, Satar.
Yeah. $1 million question in your own words. I'm joking. But how do we spot the difference between those who are going to be calling towards the mission of the Holy Imam and those who are calling towards the what you call it, following someone who's a cult leader?
How do you spot the difference?
Yeah. How do I spot the difference when I look at their leader to know if they're on haqq or not?
Yeah, I mean, normally something I think I've realized when it comes to this cult things, one thing to look out, and it's something that Muhammad Ali actually mentioned very beautifully, where he said, for example, everyone was wrong except for me. Like when you see that happening, that's a huge red flag.
100%.
Who are you? Anta ma'soom? Who are you? Hujjat Allah? Honestly, like, let's be real. Yani, if we're not calling towards the Ahlul Bayt, and this is a point you said, this should be the biggest red flag. The hugest red flag.
So if someone is if let's say inshallah the Imam reappears Ajjallah Ta'ala Faraj Sharif, and people are doing da'wah and tabligh of his mission, right? So for example, inshallah, let's say we have the honor and the privilege of being those who are calling towards people who are not Muslim, not Shia, towards the path of the Holy Imam.
Ya Allah.
What determining factors are there to spot? I'm not saying how do we spot the Imam is the Imam. But I'm saying what differs the message from someone who's calling towards a cult leader versus someone who's calling towards the message of the Imams.
يعني are they using Quran? Are they using the hadith the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? These are I think the thaqalain. يعني if they're not following the path of thaqalain, there is 100% something wrong. يعني and the problem is, I think similar to this Ahmadi cult, these guys you mentioned, like they can also manipulate sometimes Quran and manipulate hadith. Where do you go? Sometimes we have friends, right? They may tell us, listen to this guy, come watch this guy, come with me to this meeting, let's go XYZ, right? If we spot something, now you're asking me, how can we spot this? But if we spot someone in that situation, what do we do?
Yeah.
Is there a duty of responsibility on us? That's a mad question. What do you think?
100%.
Wallah, to be honest, you know what? I think it's really tough, because when you say Quran and Hadith, at the end of the day, that is the barometer.
Yeah.
And the Quran speaks about it, right? When it speaks about Banu Israel and, the scholars and the people that they moved, يحرفون الكلمة عن مواضعه, right? They move the word from how it's supposed to be. And it blames the people, actually. It says to them
falling for the trap.
Yeah, it says to them, you don't know your scripture.
Yeah.
And that's why you fell into this trap. So there is a basic kind of, obligation on everybody to know a level of the Quran and Hadith, to be able to kind of differentiate between, like, haqq
This
and
is
batil,
what I was going
right?
to say, bro.
But how do we
because I think if you don't have that, how else are you going to know?
Exactly, that's the thing.
There's no other barometer.
So how do we save someone that doesn't know?
Well, you help them identify what is haqq. Like, as in, and this is why I feel like media is so important.
Yeah.
Was why everyone should subscribe. Because, on a level, because, like, how are you going to reach masses? Yeah, ultimately, the vision is to reach as many people with a version or like some version of the truth as possible.
The closest version.
Yeah, the closest version of the truth. And even if it's just like a mass number of people, but giving each of them a bit of the truth is better than, like, whatever, like giving them a few people a distorted version of the truth or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, knowledge and full ma'rifah of who the Imam is, how to spot him, all of that, the scriptures as well. Those are important things for us to do. Do you get me? And that's why, and it makes sense, the obligation falling on the people themselves. Otherwise, you're screwed, bro. You died the death of an ignorant.
Yeah, 100%. Inshallah, we'll do more episodes in the future. Even for the show I've got coming up, we can do an episode on how to recognize the Imam, the signs of the Imam, what makes him different in terms of, like, because when you say, calling towards himself, obviously the Imam is going to do that, right?
Yes.
He's going to call towards himself, of course, to the
Quran
and the Sunnah of Rasulullah and towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the end of the day, to the people, it's going to look like this
cult
is a
leader.
cult.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to look like a guy who's calling towards himself. He may be able to perform miracles, which people will then deem to be demonic or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Astaghfirullah.
It's like when you watch, have you seen that Netflix show, The Messiah?
Yeah, it's literally that.
It's literally that. Do you remember that?
And that's the whole thing is that is trying to prepare people for a world where there is a Messianic figure who comes and he's demonic.
You know what my thoughts was on that drama series?
Yeah.
Was that I felt like they tried to target us as the target audience.
Yeah.
The Shia. Because I felt like they related so much things to...
Well, it was a hook because they had a Messiah called Mahdi.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, the Shias will love this.
But I was happy. Obviously, he didn't reappear in, like, between the Rukn and the Maqam, bro.
Yeah.
He reappeared somewhere in Syria. They read some, like, dead report in some
report, bro.
in some
They
random
don't know
place.
about
they don't know about Kitab al-Ghaiba, bro.
Yeah, Khalfu bil-Bayda and all of that. What happens in
Exactly,
Syria?
bro.
One of
Shabab, there was
alamat
something
al-Dhuhur.
I wanted to say, by the way. There was a point I was mentioning earlier where, for example, I said certain people in authority and the female, they talk a long time, can develop into feelings and relationships. I wanted to add something, but the conversation moved. I just want to take it back there for a second. I was going to suggest something. And the suggestion is, don't keep it private. Don't keep it secret. Yani, if you have a sibling, tell a sibling. If you have a good relationship with your parents, tell your mother, tell your father. And I think also, like, those who are dealing with, let's say, this counseling thing or mediating, and because this is where I feel the most things can go wrong is during this stage, right? Because there's someone who's vulnerable, someone who's looking up to these people in a time of difficulty, is that person should make it also maybe with the second person sitting down as well, right?
Yeah. Cross-check.
Or if you're talking over the phone, there's a third party there in the background. Yani, if you have certain rigorous things in place, it's impossible to
Yeah,
go
wallah,
down
you
this
checks
rabbit
and
hole.
balances.
and this is
without a
where
shadow of
I
a doubt,
think
yeah.
the credit goes to a lot of people in our
And we
community.
see it
Like,
working.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Look
yeah,
at
yeah,
the thing is, when you go to somebody as well, you should go to somebody with a proven track record, an official platform as well. So if we look,
Yeah.
for example, like may Allah bless him, Sheikh Mohammed Hilli,
Yeah, big
Sheikh
example.
Nuru,
Yeah,
these
they
guys
do
are doing
incredible
incredible
work.
work
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
proven track record.
And do you know what?
Sorted out so many people's problems.
Can I just shout out?
Yeah.
Sorry, just both of them in specific, Sheikh Noor and Sheikh Hilli. May Allah preserve them. They are incredible. You know, I had a friend of mine who was going through a specific
Yeah.
issue, a family issue. Yeah, the guy goes.
So
to me,
many people.
He goes. I'm not gonna say which specific sheikh, but because I don't want to, in case it's not true or whatever. But he goes, this sheikh told me that at this present point in time, he's dealing with 7 other identical cases to me. So he's like, during the day, he's got his commitments as a resident alim. He's got his family life. He's got children. He's taking his kids to school. He's got to be a husband. He has to earn an income. And beyond that, he's dealing with 8 cases, including mine. And then that's just my case. And then on top of that, he's fundraising, charities thing. There's got to plan his lectures. He's got reading, learning, research. How do these scholars, mashallah, get the time for it?
credit
And then
to
within that, you have like organizations within our communities which are doing things. I know within Stanmore, for example, there's a bereavement system, there's a mental health system, there's a maternity support system within our community in Northwest London. And then in other communities, you have individuals, or in the wider Shia community, you have individuals online and in person who are offering these sorts of services. Counseling, marital services, dealing with childhood trauma, reparenting, which we're going to hopefully have an episode on soon. Like, these are really important things which our general scope of knowledge on as a community is not great, but is improving.
And I think these are the conversations that are so important to have on After Maghrib.
Very good.
As well, because After Maghrib, like it tackles that, like,
It's
you know,
the best,
that middle.
the best channel on YouTube.
100%. We're obviously
best
on our
channel.
journey to how many?
6 million.
6 million.
6
inshallah.
million.
How far
We're
up
like-
are we? We're like,
well,
5
we're getting
million,
like we get
900,000.
we get like 600 a month, guys. There's like 52% of you who are watching the video but are not subscribed. Why, brothers? If you're this far into this podcast, smash it, bro. Smash the subscribe button, please.
And obviously,
Ya
watch
Allah.
out for more
And
content coming up.
we won't start a cult or anything. You know what I'm saying? You could join our Instagram channel. It's the closest thing we have to a cult. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Instagram
what
channel,
else?
yeah.
Start using the yellow moon emoji. That's it.
Allahu Akbar.
That's how you spot us.
Allahu Akbar.
The after Maghribians.
The After Maghrib.
Like believers. But like
Whoa. I don't know what you're talking about, mate.
Said Ali Rada winners.
Abu Ammar al-Maghrib.
Rada wolves. La Maghribis. La Maghribis is a sick name. Huh? Maghaba. Nah, Maghribis is a sick name. What does that mean? Like Moroccans?
Maghribi is like Morocco, yeah, bro.
Yeah, so our
Nothing to
groups
do
are
with
the
that place,
Morocco.
bro.
Yeah, that's kind of mad. It's kind of mad.
Never been there.
Yeah, bro.
I've been there with the family.
The Rada wolves.
Alhamdulillah.
Nah, do you know when?
I like
Said-
that clarification with
Do you
the
know when?
family.
Wait, let me. I need to find this. I need to find the
inserted
list. When Said Ali started his Instagram channel for his personal page,
Who, me?
yeah,
Oh God.
yeah, the Shia of Ali. I was like,
when we were
I gave
discussing
him-
what to call it.
I was like, you need to give yourselves, names. Like, for example, like you have believers, yeah, Justin Bieber or whatever, you know, those ones. So I was like, rather winners, rather wolves, rather royals, and then like the Sayyid Ali one. You know, Sayyid Ali's always like, shit, I'm proud.
Yeah.
So I was Ahlul Vibes, Ali Vengers. There's like mad ones. This is all ChatGPT.
That's just HBT, yeah. You can tell.
ChatGPT just
You can
like
tell.
chatting
Man's
them out.
Ali Avengers.
Yeah. That's the Sayyid Ali
cold.
all over it.
Ali wiyaka Ali.
Yeah.
Can
Right,
I also
boys.
add one more point?
Last.
Go for
Yalla.
it.
This
Go
is
for
the
it.
one, and I think it's very
May Allah
important and
reward you,
vital.
I also want to add a point after him.
Please,
Very quickly.
please.
Bismillah.
Do you want to go before me?
Well, please go ahead.
Astaghfirullah.
Actually, let me go,
Yeah,
and then you can end, because it's better to end on your point.
Allahu Akbar.
I think what's also very, very important, I think, here is, and we mentioned it at the beginning, our perception of women as well, right? As males, and, you know, with the Red Pill movement, Andrew Tate, I think that's also a very, very important part of this conversation.
Absolutely.
And Tashayyu', alhamdulillah, is a religion in which we have Sayyidah Fatima Zahra at the center of our religion. And no matter how bad things get. Like if there's a Shi'i and he wants to say something about women, even if he thinks twice because of that one lady.
MashaAllah.
Right? So that I think is something that is very, very important as well to keep in mind as Shia, to study these women and these personalities in Shi'ism that we hold in high regard, and that will protect us. I think when you look at other schools of Islam, they don't have an example like Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. I think even when I look back at my experiences, for example, I was in university, we did a Islam ISOC quiz. I put on the board, who is Sayyidat Nisa'i Ahl al-Jannah? And I've put 4 options. And I put the 4 women of paradise. And when we said at the end that the answer is Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, one of the brothers there, he's a Sunni brother. He's a knowledgeable brother. He reads a hadith. And he says to me, where's your evidence for this?
Ajib.
And I showed him a narration in Sahih Muslim. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. And the reason why they don't know it is because in their circles, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra is never emphasized.
Yeah.
Why? Why is she not emphasized? The more you emphasize Fatima Zahra, imagine if every day the same way, every Friday the same way they say Rasulullah left the Quran and Sunnah. Rasulullah, if the amount of times they mention Ibn Taymiyyah, imagine if every week the Khatib stood up and he said, Rasulullah said Fatimatun bid'atun minni. Man adhaha faqad adhani. If they said that every week, what's the next question that's going to come in the minds of the listeners?
What happened to her?
Oh, I just to emphasize on this as well, I think you're very right. Yeah, and sometimes I think it's just one question, and I don't know if they purposely do this, but I feel like they don't tell their congregation or their circles because hundreds and thousands of questions are going to come up.
100%.
And they're all going to come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is dangerous for them.
100%. Yeah. And I think this is what I think kind of separates us as well, alhamdulillah. To have that perspective about women that enables us to kind of understand their role in society, the respect that they have and the honor that they have. And I think that is very, very important to re-emphasize as well for anybody that is listening, Sunni, Shia, whoever it is, because that, I think that perception is what leads to a lot of these, like, you know, these manipulations and a lot of abuse that occurs, especially against women, because that is the kind of the purpose of the video that we were doing today. So I thought that was very important to mention as well.
Fully agree. Amazing. Thank you for mentioning Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, because now inshallah it's a reason for those who probably are not from the school of Ahl al-Bayt to go look into her life. And speaking about her greatness, this great lady was attacked, this great lady was abused, this great lady, her rights were taken away. Look into it, inshallah. But the point I want to mention is that, and I think the majority of the issues are like this case, this alleged case against, for example, Mohammed Hijab, why maybe people may speak and interact with these individuals. They got a beard, they mention verses from the Quran, they debate here and there, they have a social following, they have platforms, they have people who listen into them. And I think the majority of sisters who fall trapped to these things, they reach out to these people. Support Mohammed Hijab on one side, but people similar in his field, even in the Shia community, don't reach out to these people. Reach out to the experts, reach out to the people of actual true knowledge, the professionals, like the likes we gave Sheikh Mohammed Ali as an example. These are the people you need to reach out to. Not someone who gives da'wah on YouTube and you mention him and then you slide in their DMs, and of course, bro, things will go sideways down the line. And normally the sisters say, you know what, we just wanted advice, we always listen to them. I don't think they do it. They don't mean anything wrong, right? But that could trigger something unwanted, an outcome that's not desired by both sides. And we always have these stories. Like, so I don't want to mention things, but how much times do people reach out, for example, to after Maghrib on things
Oh my God!
We don't have answers for.
Yeah, 100%. Daily.
We try our best, right, to respond to as much as we can.
We in the last,
and we advise them where to go if we know the answers for it. But go to the right people, ask 100%. The right people, and inshallah,
yeah. Even with us, like we're middlemen. Yeah, like we're trying to take you towards the scholars, right? This is not the end of the journey. Like this is your journey, like. To start going towards the scholars, and
this is the
middle ground. Yeah, border control, 100%.
We give the
100%. We literally, like, I'm looking at message requests, and sometimes, guys, I'm sorry, we ignore them because we don't know what to say. Like someone DM'd us asking about I'm not even going to read it out in case they're listening, but just about the rights that a husband and a wife has in the case of a marital issue. Other people ask questions which, like, we don't need to answer. Like, what are our personal stances and beliefs on different governments and specific militias? Like, that's not our place. Leave us alone, bro. We're just out here trying to talk about flipping religion, innit?
What's the most question that you get asked personally?
About what?
Let's say, for example,
how the kids, those ones.
No. Like, you're here. You're a co-host on After Maghrib. You're part of After Maghrib. I'm sure Sayyid Mushtaba as well. Behind the scenes, maybe he gets DM. What is one question that will come repetitive?
As in, obviously, I'll always get, how's the podcast? How's the podcast?
Okay.
And I'll
apart from the pod itself.
Oh, you're smashing it. Smashing it.
No, Ahmed. Apart from the podcast.
Oh,
do you get any other questions?
I get asked a lot about time management.
Okay.
If I'm honest.
Okay.
I can't lie. I think the same as well. I get a lot of the same questions.
How do you fit everything in? So day to day, running a business, family, fatherhood, husband, like being all of these things. You're still a husband. You're still a dad. You're still a son. You're still a sibling. You're still a friend. You're still a colleague. You're still a khadim in some way.
And you're doing a podcast every week.
And on top of that, you're doing something voluntarily. But Allah knows best. Like, I'm far from the example which is to be set. Do you know what I mean? And
no, you're a great example, Ahmed.
No, wallah, I'm not.
Trust me.
There's examples of people, and I always say Mohamed Ali, mashallah.
Not even.
Hold on, no. Let me just say something. Both of you.
Not even.
This guy speaks like 14 languages. Yeah.
15, bro. 15.
Exaggeration.
He's learning a language right now while doing courses right now. While he's just had a newborn baby. Yeah. He's studying at the same time. Yeah. He's making formula milk bottles. Yeah. And on top of that, he still has time to play FIFA tournaments every Friday. Wallah. He plays FIFA every day, bro.
And work full time.
And you work full time and give lectures and...
Come on, bro.
And you spend hours.
Your shirt.
You spend hours debating Ahmed in the WhatsApp group.
Honestly, bro. Ahmed wastes my time. You know that.
This guy.
Ahmed actually wastes my time. Honestly.
You know what? Yeah. You know what? How often I put this guy in his place.
This guy today.
Oh, like today, yeah?
I said put him in his place.
Yeah, bro, come on, man.
I said ChatGPT.
Bro,
yeah, bro. I had to fix grammatical errors.
You put him in his place. I was out of place. I'm like, what's going on?
I learned from you guys, honestly. I learned from you both.
ChatGPT on steroids.
May Allah reward you. Ammar.
Habibi, man. Thank you so much.
Al-Banadiri.
Salamullah ala ahli Banadir, bro.
Guys, I love this convo.
Yeah, it was good. Inshallah, we'll join the cult of the Rada Wolves.
Inshallah.
Nah, I'm joking.
Inshallah, I'll be the first one.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, hope you've enjoyed the conversation, and please forgive us if we've said anything out of place. And again, we just want to reiterate the fact that if you are going through something, make sure you reach out to people, reliable people, and in some cases, maybe even more than one person who might have specific levels of knowledge to be able to guide you in the right direction as well. I want to thank my co-host Mohamed Ali.
Habibi.
And our guest Sayyid Ali Radawi.
Thank you.
Habibi Sayyid. Inshallah, we'll hopefully see you at some point in the future. We'd love to do a part 2.
Inshallah, next Thursday.
Inshallah.
Let's put the date in the diary.
Yeah, I think we need to make him a regular at some point.
Yeah, bro. You know what? He would be a great host.
He would
be a great host. I think we gotta look into this, man.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm enjoying this chair, huh? I'm not gonna leave.
I've sat there a couple times now.
You have?
And I've really enjoyed it.
I had FOMO, so I forced myself to sit here.
Yeah. And you got the shelves behind you.
Alhamdulillah, came in a good.
Looks really good.
Good week.
New
good
look.
Week. By the way. Oh yeah.
This is something Mushtaba that people always ask for. When is the store going online?
Soon.
How soon?
Soon. Yeah, sure. Sayyid,
bro.
You're putting him on the spot.
The website is
just merchandise is coming out
bro.
soon.
Where's the merchandise at?
Bro, again,
it's been weeks, bro.
There's
guys,
DMs.
we were talking about it in the event.
There's
DMs.
DMs.
You know, if you guys are still listening, and just the last thing I want to say is support After Maghrib. Please, whatever you can. A few pounds a month goes a long way to sustaining our bills. We're a month behind the rent, I'm being told, which is not great. But there's an opportunity here to do a level of khidmah which you can do from afar, from the click of a button, from your Apple Pay on your phone or whatever it is. It just goes a long way. There are people, subhanallah, yesterday I got forwarded a message about a sister who joined a certain charity from Melbourne, Australia. And if she's listening, may Allah reward her. She said that I heard the charity and the work being done on the podcast, and therefore I decided to join the charity. And that charity
Very
forwarded
nice.
that message to me and said thank you. So like there's work
Very
being
nice.
done, and there's hopefully a domino effect of service being done for the wider community. So
Inshallah.
yeah, guys, support the work.
And
Anything
you
else?
can become a partner by visiting
Aftermaghrib.com
aftermaghrib.com.
/donate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Ali.
All right, Mohamed Ali. Thank you, bro.
Bro, thank you so much for having me, bro.
And we'll see you
It's a
soon.
pleasure.
Back
We'll
on
see you
a
soon.
Of course,
Aftermaghrib
I'll be
special.
back. I'll be back, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. Watch out for me. Muharram. It's coming.
yeah. And hopefully before, inshallah, as well.
Inshallah.
I'm
Inshallah.
still a while away.
May Allah
Yeah.
give you tawfiq and success
Wallahi, ameen.
in the
Ameen,
upcoming
inshallah. Ya
new
Allah.
project, inshallah.
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 Ya Ali.
Habibi.
All right, guys. We will see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Allahi
barakatuh.
wa barakatuh.